Have you ever wished you could eavesdrop on a conversation with a millionaire? My name is Michelle Thompson. I'm a retired project controls engineer and business professor, and that's exactly what I'm going to do in this podcast. I get to ask the questions that everyone else wishes they could. I'm going to find out exactly how they were able to build their empires through automation and outsourcing. And I'm going to break it down in a way that helps you build your business to run on autopilot. Don't miss out on Automate to Dominate.
From author Donnie Bovine comes the book, How to Be a Success Champion, available on Amazon. After years of living other people's dreams, author Donnie Bovine decided to jump out on his own and start a business, thinking it would be easy. Instead, he had a rude awakening and quickly understood that he had spent 20 years being an employee and had no idea how to be a business owner. His business was tanking, and he was on the brink of losing everything when he decided to fight for business freedom. In this must-read and life-changing book, author Donnie Bovine shares with readers his story intermingled with lessons learned from his mistakes and his failures. In How to Be a Success Champion, you will find advice the author received from mentors and how he went from zero to a six-figure business. The author walks you through the steps of how to get out of your own way, how to play the game of business and win, find your strengths, how to network effectively, how to build a personal brand, how to create champions for your business, how to get great at sales, how to take complete ownership of you and your business. How to Be a Success Champion from author Donnie Bovine, available on Amazon in both Kindle and paperback editions. Order your copy right now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Automate to Dominate. Today we have Mike Vardy with us, and he is a writer, speaker, productivity strategist, and the founder of Productivityist. Also, you can check him out on his podcast called the Productivity Podcast. So those of us who are at home looking for stuff to do, definitely check it out because this is an awesome podcast that's going to give you some killer content. A couple of years ago, he published The Front Nine, How to Start the Year You Want Anytime You Want, and coming out in a couple months, right?
So far, so good.
So far, so good. TimeCrafting. So a better way to get right things done. So June 2020 still the target date?
That's the target date, but with us being in uncharted waters right now, that may change. The publishing industry is in a bit of a weird space, as most people are right now. So we'll see. But you can still get updates on the book and stuff if you go to productivityist.com/book, so you can keep updated on it for sure.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being with us today. I really, really appreciate this.
Thanks for having me, Michelle. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So tell us, how in the world did you become the productivityist?
Well, I was trying to balance a whole bunch of different things, and so much so I don't like the word balance anymore because I think it's a misnomer. I was trying to basically live in harmony with all the different elements in my life. I was working at Costco as a manager of 2 departments. I was now freshly dating my my now wife. Eventually we got married, so then there was a kid on the way. I was trying to do all these things and start getting back into comedy. Like, I need to find a way to be productive. I can't do all of these things just, without having some kind of structure or framework. So I started to study like Covey and Tony Robbins had this program out called The Time of Your Life, and I took that program, and I discovered David Allen. And what happened is it became its own project. Like, the productivity part became its own thing. It took on a life of its own. And ultimately, what I started to do was write about it, talk about it, and then I created a productivity parody site about it. And it was called, it became Eventualism, which is no longer active. And I was doing the Stephen Colbert-esque take on a productivity expert. So I would do a podcast, and this is back in 2008 when I was doing this podcast. I'd been doing a little bit of writing about it before him, but then I did the podcast, and I had David Allen on the program. And David Allen is the founder of Getting Things Done, otherwise known as GTD. And when I had him on the program, and I've had other people, I had Seth Godin back in the day, and it was a lot of fun to connect with him. And David Allen's people, after I got off the call with him, said, "Hey, you really know this stuff, because you have, in order to parody or satirize something, you have to really be well versed in it." Is they said, would you mind writing for us? And I said, sure. So I started to write for the GTD Times, which is their blog. And those blog posts are still up to this day. And they said, just don't make fun of us. Like, make it fun and entertaining, but don't satirize us. So I started to become the very thing that I had parodied. So I went from this productivity enthusiast, somebody who was trying to get a lot out of productivity, so much so I was parodying it, to a productivity specialist. Now I was talking about it from a very authoritative, standpoint, and kind of an expert. And I was learning about apps and all these different methods and being interviewed and all that stuff. And then ultimately, which is where TimeCrafting was born, is I became a strategist. So then I had my own methods. And the term productivityist came from me just coining the phrase on a podcast, my old podcast, Mike's on Mike's, where I said, I think the term, somebody said like scientist, ist came up. I'm like, I guess I'm a productivityist. And a bunch of people said, oh, Mike's the productivityist, which was never my intent. My intent was to call the site Productivityist and the company Productivityist, because anybody can be one. But you can't always control what your audience or what your people say. And so like Mike Vardy's the productivityist. Even my old podcast producer for the Productivityist podcast said, had me on his show. And he goes, I'd like to welcome the productivityist, Mike Vardy. I'm like, are you kidding me, John? Like, you know that I'm not the productivityist, but you don't get to decide. So I am essentially Mike Vardy, the productivityist. And I kind of embody that now with everything I do, from helping people who are night owls be more productive to simple, durable, and effective flexible methods for crafting your time, and even helping kids now a little bit with their time management stuff, which especially as we're in these uncertain times with less structure, with what I'm calling the Clockwise Initiative. So I've got my hands in a few buckets. I've long since left Costco and even the comedy behind to a degree, and I get to do this from my humble office every single day, and I love it.
That's pretty awesome, right? So you talk about, on your website, you talk about productivity not necessarily being productivity, right?
Right.
So it's not all equal. Talk
Yeah.
to us about that concept, and especially in the context of small business owners running around with our hair on fire, wearing way too many hats, the typical norm.
Well, and I'm a small business owner too, and I think the biggest thing that people need to understand is productivity is not about efficiency and effectiveness on its head. A lot of people said, "Oh, it's about doing things efficiently or effectively." Those are byproducts or side effects. I believe productivity, and again, when you're facing overwhelming circumstances, such as running a small business and having so many things on the go, and you're also trying to operate your life. We're both sitting at home right now. I'm assuming you're at home. And my kids, I have my door, which you can't see here. Actually, you can see it right where there's a door thing on the outside that says, I'm in doing something right now. So I have to kind of create a boundary and structure around it. Productivity is really more about like, what do you intend to do? So what's your intention? And then how are you going to pay attention to that? That's the framing. If you have both of those, then you're going to have levels of productivity. And the more that you create parameters for you to have those, the more productive you will be, which means then you can become more efficient and more effective. But productivity isn't about just the things you intend to do. Like, I'm going to do a lot of things, because you could be doing the wrong things, right? And it's not about like just trying to get as much done as possible in a given day, or giving your attention to a bunch of different things, because that could be scattered and reckless, and you won't necessarily be putting your mind to the point of like, hey, maybe, you know what, I don't need to wear 17 hats. Maybe I only need to do the things I need to do. And I can, if I focus on these other things, then, as Bill Walsh, the football coach, you say the score takes care of itself. I've always said that intention without attention is powerless, and attention without intention is aimless. And we tend to gravitate towards one or the other. But when we have that sweet spot of marrying the two together, and it's not easy to do, but it can be simple to do. When you do that, then you're going to be able to do more of the things that you need to do, more of the things that you want to do. And that's through like things like defining your day, filtering your focus. And then ultimately, when you do those things, you'll make every moment matter.
So give us like, I don't know, top 5 tips for now we're home, the kids are screaming, nobody's in school, everything's crazy. everybody's quarantined and everybody's starting to get just a little bit crazy from being quarantined.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, top 5 tips to help us out to be productive and be intentional, like you're talking about.
Okay, so the first thing is going to be probably a little bit odd, but it's something you're probably already doing. And if you're watching this on Facebook Live right now, you would definitely be in the position to do it. And that's journaling, chronicling of some sort, telling the story of your days, especially during times like this, where, this is a unique moment in history. And it's a season. Like, we have to keep that in mind too. I was just talking to someone just before we hopped on this call. And I mean, if you think things are going to go back to normal, that normal's gone. So knowing that, tell the story of what that normal was like. And I can do this because I've got several years of journal entries in my app. I use an app called Day One for this, but you could use a multitude of different apps or even a handwritten journal. But the idea behind it is telling, like, look at this, like, I'll give you an example. It's kind of like Star Trek, the captain's log is, here's where we were, here's where we are now, here's where we're going. That's all a journal entry really needs to be at the most. And sometimes it can just be a photo of what your day looks like. It's about building that pattern, because reflection and being able to look back on your day and be able to look back further and see how you got there is a really valuable productivity tool, because it tells you, like, am I going in the right direction? Have I been doing the right things? What were the reasons behind me not having a super productive day? Oh, well, it's because I was tired. Oh, you know what? I watched the news first thing in the morning. Oh my goodness, I got to stop doing that. Like, those kind of things. It allows you to create some empathy and some grace around your day. And also, you can look back, and I did this with a client yesterday. I looked back. Day One actually has this feature, like, on this day, like Facebook does. And you can go back and see on this day what you did. And my goodness, some of the stuff I did 6-7 years ago have led me to where I am today. And the time is really your story, right? So if on Facebook, there's that feature of, like, on this day, you can see, oh, wow, I remember that, or wow, that didn't matter anymore. I think that's a big thing. And just taking a few moments to do that, 5 minutes. There's an app called the 5-Minute Journal, for crying out loud. That's a way you can do it. And the reason I bring up Facebook is because a lot of people spend a lot of time on social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. If you take some of that time, not even all of it, a fraction of that, and apply it towards writing a journal just for yourself, that's going to be valuable. Because if you're giving all of this information and data and your own thoughts to social media instead of yourself, if you think that that's worth it, surely you're worth that as well. And also, I think that social media might be a little bit of a better place if we kept some of those thoughts in a private journal as well. So that's one tip. Another tip is to start to look at your to-do list, not by the tasks on them, but by the modes you need to be on to work on them. So I'd mentioned energy levels earlier, and I talk about this in my book, but I also have written about this before, about the mode-based work. And I have 5 categories of mode-based work. And they spell the word treat: theme, resource, energy, activity, and time. So if you start to categorize your to-do list by any one of these categories of mode, so I'll use energy as an example. If you could look at your to-do list and say, I'm really tired, what can I do when I'm tired? And you see, like, 5 or 6 tasks that are listed as tired. It doesn't necessarily matter what those tasks are yet. All you know is that you're tired and that you've got to face the day. Then you can say, okay, well, here are the 5 tasks I know I can do when I'm tired. What are those tasks? So making the details of your to-do list, like those, almost like the secondary or even the third consideration, and looking at it like, okay, I'm in my office. And that might be a bit too broad, but I'm in my office. What can I do when I'm in my office? That's a resource. Oh, I have 5 minutes I'll give you, before our call, I had 5 minutes, not even. What can I do in 5 minutes? Not, let me jump into email, let me jump on Facebook, because that could be a whole black hole of productivity there. But be able to say, you know what, I have 30 minutes between these 2 meetings. What can I do in 30 minutes? Oh, here are 6 5-minute tasks. What are those tasks? So looking at your to-do list, not through that lens, rather than the lens of, well, let me look at my list and see what's in sequential order, or let me look at the details of my day. The details don't matter. When you walk into a shopping mall, you know that the directory of the mall tells you where the stores are, but you don't know what's inside those stores till you get there. You just know you need to, oh, I'm going to go to Target because I need to buy these things, but you don't know what the prices are. You don't know what's available. You don't know any of that stuff, but you know you're going into, quote, Target mode or shopping mode. I think that's another one that can be really helpful. I'll give you a third one, because 5 is, there's a lot that I
Okay.
can go with 5. And then
But before you
sure,
do that, so you have like a productivityist journal,
hmm
planner.
I have what's yep. I
Does
have
that like help with this?
It does. So I have what's called the daily driver. I used to have another tool called the Productivityist Planner, but I've evolved it into the daily driver. And what it does is it has on there two things. Number one, it has a journal tracker so you can track your journal entries. It doesn't have a journal in it because I think a journal is best kept separate, right? Because you can disconnect from the day to day and just focus on the story. But also in the daily driver, there is a column called modes. It's part of the AM list, which is part of the daily driver. And you can list your modes there. But you can do this in your task apps that you have. If you use a to-do list app, you probably have tags or labels in these apps, whether you're using OmniFocus, Todoist, Evernote, doesn't matter. You can create the modes as tags. So instead of like looking at the date, which is what people often do, what do I need to do today? Here's all the stuff. You could say, okay, let me today, like for example, today is my listening day, which is and this is the third thing I was going to bring up, which is theming your time. I know that when I wake up on a Tuesday, I don't ask myself, well, what am I going to do today? Because that's a terrible open-ended question that my brain will go, I don't know, I'll do whatever I want. Instead, I say, well, today is listening day. Okay, what do I do on listening day? What are the tasks? I don't look at today's date. I don't look at the tasks. I don't even look at my projects. I click on the tag that says listening and I see all those tasks. Then from there, I can just stop and go, okay, well, let me go through these. Or, well, which ones are due today? I could do that. Or I could say, I'm tired. Let me look at the listening tasks that are low energy. So it just gives me this filtration device. And the paper planner gives you, I use the daily driver as I will go to my digital task app because I think digital task apps are great for long-term storage, like long-term incubation, but I will grab tasks off of that digital task app and put them on my daily driver, as well as anything else that might have come to mind that I didn't put in there. And I normally do it based on the daily theme. So today would have all of my tasks that are listed, and a bunch of them would be listening tasks because that's when we're doing this. But I like to have both. I like to have paper and digital because the digital is where things live once they've come from my brain. And if they didn't get done on paper, which most don't, to be honest, they go to digital. And then in the evening when I'm setting up my next day, because I'm a night owl, not a morning person, I'll go, okay, well, what's tomorrow? Tomorrow, I'll do this tonight. Tomorrow's my looking day. Okay, let me look at all the looking tasks. Then I get to choose from that smaller list as opposed to the bigger list, which ones are the most important to me? What do I need to do? What do I want to do? It's all about filtering lists. And when you start to use things like journaling and mode-based work and theming your time, then you're looking through your to-do list in a different lens, and you can break down your to-do list into the actual amount of tasks you have and not feel overwhelmed by them. Because the biggest problem a lot of people have, I guess this would be tip 4, is they don't break their tasks down into small enough particles. They're looking at a project like, here we go, plan podcast episode. That's a big project. Or just do podcast episode, which is even worse. There's steps inside of there. And your brain, when it looks at that, goes, I can't do that. Especially right now. Imagine right now, you've got so many things overwhelming. You've got so many things going on. And you're like, do podcast episode? I don't know but if you broke it down into like, you know, ask for bio from guest, set like all those little steps, you could do those. You could make incremental measurable progress on that. And then what happens is that you've actually moved things forward. And because those tasks are so visible and clear, you're being productive. You're doing the thing your intention is to make that podcast happen, and you've got a way to pay attention to it. But a lot of people go, well, no, that's making my to-do list way too long. It isn't making it any longer. It's just making it more visible. Like that's the bias and the stuff that so yeah, I use both. I use my daily driver as like, again, the way to disconnect from the technology so I could focus on lack of pings and things like that and give my attention to it. But there is an ebb and flow between them that often happens again at the end of the day while I set myself up for the next day with these very clear boundaries that may seem rigid to some, especially, for people who are listening to this and watching this right now going, wow, that seems like it's very rigid and structured. But it's not like I said, okay, I woke up one day and said, okay, I'm theming all 7 days of the week and giving every month a theme and having all these. This is an evolutionary process. That's why it's called TimeCrafting. It's something that a craftsperson never finishes being a craftsperson. If they want to get better at their craft and they truly want to be a craftsperson, they will never stop trying. And that's what you have to do with time. So this methodology, this philosophy that I teach isn't something that's you do it all at one big gulp, because you'll choke on it. You will literally. So it's about like, hey, Mike, you know what? I'm going to try journaling today. Why don't I just try that? Or I'm going to look at my to-do list through the lens of energy. Or you know what, Mike? I'm going to theme one day of the week, maybe the day that I know I do a lot of household stuff, and just call it household day, and then start to build it from there.
So give me an example of a looking task versus a listening task.
Okay. So this actually brings into a good context about the idea of which I call the Goldilocks factor, which is looking used to be called my video day. So I used to actually really get narrow with it. It's my video day. So looking would be anything that I look at. I'll watch YouTube videos. I will. I'll get a great example would be I'm learning how to use LumaFusion on my iPad because I want to do better video editing. That would be a looking task, right? Listening would be I'm going to listen to some audiobooks on Scribed, which I use as or I'm going to make phone calls on my listening day. So I'm going to call my friend Ted, who's right now in quarantine, and I don't know how many people contact him. So I'm going to reach out to him and call him. I'll call my mom, like phone calls. What happened on my listening day? Having a coaching call with someone. That could be like, so for example, us doing this on my listening day, even though we're doing video right now, it's a podcast. So that's when you can schedule. If you tried to schedule with me any other day, it wouldn't happen. So I can set boundaries around that. But it used to be my audio day and my video day. But the problem is that those were too hard. They were too narrow. So I would run out of audio tasks to do. And then my brain would go, great, you're done, which is not true. It would just say, well, now what am I going to do? And then I would go do something that didn't matter. Same thing with video. I'd run out of video tasks. So I had to broaden it. I had to make it wider. Now, if I had said, if I had gone with, looking for some people might be too soft. Well, Mike, you look at lots of different things. So you might want to go with video might be enough. YouTube might be too narrow. So it's about that Goldilocks factor, finding your just right. For me, those are just right. Now, what's interesting is video. Let's go back to that LumaFusion, learning how to use LumaFusion. That is a looking task, but it also could qualify as deep work because I have a deep work day as well. So I will often have two modes or labels per task so that I have multiple days that I could choose to do it. Because I don't want to just learn how to use LumaFusion every Tuesday. I might want to do it every Tuesday and every Thursday, right? Or if I call it a study task, I have a horizontal theme, which goes across the days, right? So hours of the day as opposed to days of the week. So if I want to study every day, I could make it I want to learn LumaFusion. Well, that's study. Great. That could be there. So I can give myself multiple decision points as to when I want to look at this task. And let's face it, time is very fluid right now anyway. Like, a long weekend is rather irrelevant for a lot of people, not everybody. But the point is that by putting that there, I give myself some options. Now, I don't want to have too many. Again, that's my Costco sensibility. When I walked into Costco, and when anyone walks into Costco and they want to buy something like ketchup, they know that they're going to buy either the big tin, the restaurant packs, or the 3-pack. And they're buying Heinz, whether they want to or not, or they're not buying ketchup, right? That's what I want. I want like that parameter of, I don't want to have overchoice. And that's why Costco does so well, because there's no decision fatigue. You go in there to buy a bottle of a 3-pack of ketchup, some milk, butter, eggs, and all of a sudden you're walking out with jeans and flat screen TV because you didn't get worn down. So that's
it's impossible to go to Costco without dropping at least $200. I'm pretty sure.
Exactly. So, and the reason that works is because you haven't been worn down by decision fatigue. So, and they also have the treasure hunt mentality where they move things around. So there's this element of discovery. So for me, the distinction between looking and listening for me is very personal. That's what those mean. But for you, they may be different. Like Michelle, you may have a looking might fall into reading. You might say, hey, well, reading is a form of looking, so I'm going to do that. Or you know what, Mike? I don't like looking. I'm going to do video. And then video could be, you might have enough that fits into the video spectrum. So when you choose themes and modes to choose from, and there are some crossover there, I don't want to get into too much of the weeds with that, but that's why the first category of mode-based work is themes. You get to you get to make them your own. You get to personalize it because even when business isn't personal, productivity always is. And I know that by having these little wayfinding points in place, that I'm essentially automating. I am giving myself automated points for my brain to go to by naturally that I don't have to think about. I just go, oh, well, what day is it? Oh, it's Thursday. Thursday's deep work day. Well, what deep work can I do? Oh, here's the 14 tasks. Yeah, but you know what? I only have 30 minutes. Okay, how many 30-minute deep work tasks can I do? Let's get started. Like that's the automation point that I have, because that's the automation that you that to me, that's the automation that you have more control over, an agency over, than any other. Because if you start using tools like Zapier, which I love, um, those things can break, right? Those things and they can be. There's a learning curve and all that. But I think that there's the best kind of automation I like is the point where I'm like, okay, I know that this bottle is the bottle that I use to drink water out of, because when I do podcast interviews, because it doesn't make a sound or anything like that, and it's easy to drink, and it's small, and it doesn't land hard, and all that. That's automation. This is the podcast. Like I can do that. And for me, that matters. For you, it might be like, well, there's 4 water bottles, so I don't care. I just want to have water ready. So it's a very personal choice. And I think once you embrace that, then you can start to craft your time in a way that really works for you.
So I have to ask, you mentioned Seth Godin, but you're also obviously a Derek Sivers fan, right?
Yeah, Derek's actually going to be on my podcast. I actually talked to Derek a couple days ago. He's going to be on my podcast in the not too distant future. We had a good conversation.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, fingers crossed. I got him to come on mine too. So
That's awesome.
hopefully, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm super, super excited. He is a super cool dude. But if you guys are listening and you want to check out what Mike's talking about, Derek Sivers has this amazing thing called Now. It's
Yep.
like what I'm working on now. And so let me just grab the link here. So productivityist.com/now
Yep.
will get you a lot of this information that we're talking about, as far as like themes, like Sunday is family day, Monday is leveling day, Tuesday is looking day, Wednesday is listening day, Thursday is the deep work day you were talking about, Friday's planning day, and then Saturday is family day again.
And that needs to be updated, because Friday I made a recent change. I think the update was from March. I have to go back and update it, which I'm going to do probably on Friday, because Friday is now my triage day. So I've made some changes. That's the great thing about themes too, is that themes, if you change your themes, then the tasks can migrate to where that new day is. So you're not changing dates to everything. You're like, so what happened is in this current climate, I'm losing like Tuesdays and Wednesdays. The reason that I chose those as my looking and listening day, because the kids weren't home. Nor was my wife ever, because nobody was home, so I could do audio and video interviews without that being an issue. But there are holidays that sometimes fall on a Monday or a Friday, school holidays, and Thursdays my wife is home. She doesn't work that day. And then of course the weekends. So the only days that I knew, it's kind of like those old logic puzzles where it's like 4 types of fruit and 4 people, and by process of elimination you can figure out what fruit that one person bought. Very similar. I'm like, so all the choice that had to be is Tuesday going to be the day I do looking, or is Wednesday, and vice versa. But now that now that everybody's home, I'm like, okay, well, now we have some boundaries around this. I'm doing less of these because of that. My podcast, luckily, is planned very far in advance, so that's good. But I was running into issues where there's a lot more people asking things of me, like, "Can you help me with this?" And I'm like, my bandwidth. Speaking of Derek's great at responding to emails. He's right on top of it. He even talks about this. He's like, today I answered X number of emails. I'm like, holy crow, dude, that's a dedication and focus for sure. I was running into an issue of at the end of the week, I'm like, I'm too tired to do deep work, which I had already decided, which is why deep work became Thursday. But I wasn't doing any planning on Friday. I was still trying to end the week. So I said, you know what? I need a day where I can just close everything down. I need a triage day. And so I decided Friday would be triage. And then I'm like, well, what about planning? Well, maybe planning can be something I do every day. I'm like, well, not really, because that's taking away from the other stuff. And I used to do planning on Sundays. But my wife and I had a discussion about this once when I was on the way to the airport going on, and I was talking about my talk, and she said, "Can I talk to you about your Sundays?" I'm like, "What is it?" She goes, "Well, Saturday's family day and Sunday's planning, but what if the weather's garbage on Saturday?" Oh, she goes, "Well, can we make it like maybe Saturdays planning on those weeks and then Sundays? And then I kind of went into productivity where I'm like, well, the theme day should be the same every single time. And I caught myself because you don't want to have that kind of discussion.
That's usually bad with your partner.
She got it. She got it. And I said, but what if I did this? I said, what if the default for Saturday was family and the backup was planning, and the default for Sunday was planning and the backup was family? And she goes, that's fine. And so, and if the weather, I mean, planning for me doesn't take an entire day. Remember, the daily theme is an overarching focus. It doesn't mean it's the only thing you do. It's just, well, I don't know what to do now. Wait a minute. What day is it? It's Friday. Oh, Friday's triage. Great. What triage task? So now when you go to this again, and I'm going to do this on Friday, so a few days from now, is it'll say Friday will be my triage day. Saturday will be family/planning, and Sunday will be planning/family. And that's kind of how, so what happens is I don't need to change the dates of my planning tasks because I barely ever use dates. I can just click on the planning tag and go, oh, it's Sunday, Sunday's planning day, or Saturday, depending on what the weather's like. And I go, okay, what planning can I do? I just had to create a triage tag. That's all I had to do. I had to create a triage mode in my task app of choice, which I did. And I just went through and by the way, the day I did that was my leveling day, because leveling is about optimization and setting things up. So that's the day I did that. So I have these places to look, which is kind of nice. And Derek does this too. Like Derek has his but Derek does, the great thing about this is that by focusing on fewer modes and fewer themes, Derek puts himself in a position to do a lot of great work because he has very few things that he actually uses as guiding principles to get that stuff done.
He is like the king of minimalist / focus / I'm only doing this.
Yeah, and no one I mean, we know about him, but he flies under the radar for a lot of people. I was watching, I don't know if you're a baseball fan, Michelle, but I was watching something on YouTube. I think it was it would have been last Wednesday. And it was about John Alderwood, the baseball player. So I grew up near Toronto, and Alderwood, I was there. I went downtown Toronto when they won the World Series the first time. And man, did we celebrate the second time too, even though I didn't go downtown. But John Alderwood was the first baseman for the Blue Jays. And if you look at his history of his career, he is one of the most underrated first basemen to ever play the game because he's not a prototypical first baseman. He wasn't like the big sluggers like Mark McGwire or even the guy that replaced him, Carlos Delgado. But he hit well. He walked more than he struck out almost every single season. Never played a minor league game before becoming a major leaguer. Has an award named after him in college baseball. All of these things. But he's also the guy that rode the subway in New York to go to the Mets games. Derek Sivers is kind of like John Alderwood. He's like, you hear about Tim Ferriss, you hear about Ryan Holiday, all of whom I think are great. But Derek Sivers is the guy that I've seen him speak, and you watch him at the World Domination. I saw him speak, and he goes, Domination Summit. I saw him speak, and he goes, you choose to go into your own business, to run your own business and become an entrepreneur for 3 reasons, one of which is more primarily your focus than any other: finance, freedom, and fame. One of those is your primary driver, but they all are partly there. And he laid out this talk, and I'm like, man. And I had a conversation with him at WDS, and he was just one of these unassuming guys that goes about his work, doesn't brag. His whole thing is keep your goals to yourself, right? And so he's very. I can't wait to have him on my show, and I know gosh, he's going to be a great get for you too. So I think that the Now page, when he came up with that idea, a bunch of us jumped on it, and it's a good self accountability tool as well, because you're saying, publicly declaring, here's what I'm working on now, which is, again, it kind of is like, well, but he says don't reveal your goals. He's talking about being very specific goals, like not in terms of this. But yeah, it's a fantastic tool that I love, and it's one that you can adopt too, because it kind of keeps you going down the path that you say you're going to go down.
And just to kind of bring in, slightly off topic, but it kind of brings us full circle here, is I actually just got done reading Anything You Want by Derek.
It's right there on my bookshelf.
Yep.
It's right there. You can see. It's hard to see because it's narrow, but I know exactly where it is in my bookshelf.
Yeah, hold on, I'll grab it so people can see it.
Oh, yours is closer.
So here you go for everybody
Yep.
watching the YouTube video, and anything you want. And so this is like, I don't know, it took me like an hour, hour and a half, right? So
Hmm.
I grabbed, the book, hopped in the tub, and just relaxed and read through and took notes while I was reading it. But this is like just super cool information how he takes things that are like big complex and just makes them like super simple and compartmentalizes everything, right?
Yep.
Which is, a lot about what this show is about. We try to systematize and automate and as much as we can, and that goes for time just as well. um,
But
but
real quick, um, another person that does this really well is Paul Jarvis. Paul Jarvis wrote the book Company of One. If you are running a business on your own and you want to know how to do that in a way that you can still do with integrity and character and in a way that makes sense for you, pick up that book. Paul is a friend of mine. He lives not too far from me, and he is just one of those guys that walks the talk in a big way. Um, so that's another one that I would recommend. And him and Derek are kind of cut from the same cloth in a lot of ways. Very unassuming, very.
yeah,
Um, but I would look at that book as well.
Paul Jarvis, Company of One.
Yep. And he's written other books too, like Everything I Know, but a few others. But Company of One is his published book that he had a publishing deal for, and it'll help you if you're running a business, especially on your own. And the other thing is it'll make you feel okay about that. Like some people don't feel okay. They're like, oh man, if I only had this empire. Right now, you don't want an empire. I'm sorry, you do not want. I was reading an article. I think it was from the Guns N' Roses drummer Duff McKagan or something like that, and he said that his biggest concern right now is paying his people. Like he can't sleep because he doesn't know where he's going to be able to pay his people. If you're running a small business that's you and maybe a couple of contractors at best, that's going to be a lot easier to handle, which means you can do the work that you're supposed to do. And putting automations in place is a great way to do that. You don't want to be thinking about the empire. The empire empires fall. So, that's just a sidebar I want to throw in there. But Paul knows this stuff too. So those two guys together can really help you formulate, like, okay, it can give you some clarity around vision and mission and stuff like that.
Awesome. That's amazing. In fact, I'm gonna totally try to hit him up and see if I can get him to do a podcast interview too. That would be amazing. So you also have, like, in addition to your weekly, right, you also have a monthly theme, right? Like
Yep.
last month was finances.
Yep.
So how do you fit monthly tasks into it's already blocked out weekly? And I know there aren't dates, but I mean, how does
So
it all fit?
so I weekly sprint. So I have daily themes, right? So and then from there, I have weekly sprints. So weekly sprints would be project based. So um, days of the week are themed, I think is what you're getting at. So the days of the week are kind of like, so for example, today, as I said, is my listening day. And then what my brain will do is I can go one of two ways. I can go, well, how do I feel? Like, what mode am I in right now? That's one way, which I already explained. Like, what energy do I have? What time? But the other way is, well, what's my monthly theme? And this month's monthly theme is, it's the book launch, which is kind of in a holding pattern to a degree. So I can go, okay, well, what listening tasks can I do that are related to the book launch? And then I look at the book launch project and I can see all those tasks. So monthly themes are often either qualities that you want to espouse better. So like finance was a good one. Finance was, and my word, that was timely. I did not expect finance to be one. And I got my financial house in order as things were kind of progressing in the way they were. And it worked out. Like I actually had cut a lot of my redundant credit card bills and things like that. Like I was very focused on that in the month of March. Um, Monthly themes they can either stand on their own, or they could be prolonged. So I have monthly themes for the book launch all the way through till July. So that's my overarching focus for like the next 3-4 months. Now, the great thing about monthly themes is that when you plan them, and I often plan them at the beginning in August, because that's my planning month, because I start my year in September to kind of mirror when my kids go to school, is I made all these themes in September when the world was very different. Now, the great thing is that I have planned for this month, but there's that quote, I think it was Eisenhower that said, when I go into battle, I find planning to be useful, but plans useless. It's kind of where I might be at right now. So if I don't theme this month, which we're halfway through, if I don't get a lot done this month, I can toss that monthly theme aside and then focus on, okay, well, just the daily themes and make measured progress on the regular. If I decide to change it, let's say I'm going to make it for the planner, the Productivityist planner, let's say. Then my brain will go, oh, well, tomorrow is my looking day. What looking tasks can I do that are for the productivity planner? Oh, I can make a video for it. I can make several videos. I can plan out the videos for it. Like, there's lots of things I can do. So the monthly theme, it's almost like a pyramid, right? Like it scales up. So daily themes are here. Monthly themes are above that. And then I also have what's called the annual axiom, which is like a phrase or a motto that I use instead of a resolution to. So my resolution or my annual axiom for this year is whatever it takes, no matter what. So whenever I take on a project or a theme, it's going to be like a monthly theme. It's going to be, I will do it whatever it takes, no matter what. If I can't do it, then it didn't make the grade. And the book launch made the grade when I was launching a book in June. It may not now. So I have to reassess using that annual axiom as kind of like a North Star of sorts. So that's kind of how they all feed. But I can stop. The great thing about time crafting is that if you're like, you know what, Mike, I don't want a theme every month. Oh, well, then don't. Just have daily themes. Or, you know what, Mike, I want to have monthly themes, but I don't want to have daily themes. Okay, great. Then you can work by mode and go, okay, I'm tired today. What can I do when I'm tired? Well, what's the monthly theme? Oh, it's for me, for my personal theme, because I do personal ones as well. It's fitness. Okay, well, what can I do for fitness when I have low energy? Oh, I know, I can do yoga. Okay, great. Let's do some yoga. Or I can plan, I can prepare my breakfast for the next day. Like, so they all kind of feed into one another, which is really nice, because that's the term time crafting came from Minecraft. It came from me walking with my son, and I tell the story in the book, to school. And you're not supposed to ask your kids, like, what are you learning in school and how is school today? Because it's normally like a fine, nothing much, I'm bored, like, that kind. But I said, hey, can you tell me a bit more about Minecraft? Because I don't know anything about it. And he started to talk me through it. And he talked about like how you have these elements, and then you take these elements and combine them, and then you make something better out of them, and then you can build upon that. And I'm like, my brain started to go into writer mode. I'm like, so like I do with time, I take the calendar and I take the to-do list, and by putting them together, you make a better day and a better month and a better life. And he goes, he's like, yeah, I guess. Like, he's 9.
He's like, oh, come on, Dad.
Sure, Dad, whatever. Can't we just have a normal conversation? But that's where it came from. And so to me, that is you'll never stop. You can't win Minecraft. Like, no one wins Minecraft. If you've ever played the game, you don't win it. You just play it. Same with the game of life is something that you necessarily win. You live it. You can have a great life. If you do more of the things you really need and want to do. If you don't, then you're not going to have as great a life. But at the end of the game of life, there's only one outcome, right, for everybody. So why not create yourself a nice framework that can foster freedom, because that's what frameworks do, but one that allows you to, work simply, have the durability that you need so that you have confidence in it, but also be flexible enough that you can work within it. You're muted.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So let's say, yeah, everybody laugh. It's okay. So let's say somebody's listening to this and they're like, Mike, that sounds really great in theory, but this just doesn't fit into my life. How do they take just small incremental steps to I mean, what you're talking about is like an evolution of years and years of work, right?
Yep.
But when you first started, it didn't look like this, right? So how do you take somebody with, 22 hats and my hair's on fire, making little tiny incremental steps every day till it turns into this amazing thing?
So, honestly, it depends on the person, but I will say that I can normally tell which tip to give based on the way someone looks at their time. So if you are somebody that lives and dies by the calendar, you put your tasks on your calendar, let's say. So I'll give you a great example. If you put things like, I want to work on this during this day, and you put it on your calendar, which is really an appointment you're making with yourself, then I would say the simplest access point is to give some period of time on your calendar a theme. That's where I would start. I would start with time theming. So don't do 7 days, don't do 5 days, don't do 3 days, do one. So, and again, it's easier when we're in a world where, hey, I have the weekend. The weekend is when I do these things like household tasks. Well, right now you can do household tasks pretty much anytime you want. But I challenge you, if you're working as you're running your own business, you still have a weekend. You still have those days where you're not supposed to, like, that household stuff needs to be done. So instead of doing the household stuff every single day, maybe say, you know what, like Saturday is normally the day where I would do grocery shopping, household stuff, laundry. Just theme that day and say, that's my household day. And then gravitate those tasks that are related to household on that day, and don't do them the other days, because it'll be okay if you don't. Like laundry can wait if you pace it out enough. And even if it doesn't, you can say, oh, I have to do a small load, but the bulk gets done on Saturdays, or Sundays, if that's the way you want to do it.
And so how does, somebody listening to this and they're thinking, oh my gosh, this is so rigid. This is going to drive me absolutely crazy. Talk about how this system actually puts your brain at ease and actually makes things easier as opposed to putting yourself in a box.
Well, the way that works is you still have choice because it gives you an overarching focus. You know where the thing should land, but it doesn't mean that that's where it has to. So for example, I know that if I don't get my podcasts all done today, that the next default day isn't tomorrow. It's next Tuesday. That doesn't mean I won't do them, any looking or listening or whatever tasks, until the following Tuesday. In some cases, that just isn't realistic. But I have a natural place for it to land. And that's important because your brain needs these little clues, right? So if this light bulb was to burn out today, I can still see. So it's not like I'm sitting going, oh my God, I got to replace that light bulb. In fact, if I was to replace that light bulb, I'd be doing myself a disservice because I'm pulling myself away from the things I need to do and want to do. And that's what theming can help you with. It gives you I can say, well, that's a household task. Can that wait till Saturday? That's the thing. Can it wait till Saturday? Yes, it can. Great. I'll put it on my to-do list for Saturday. So it just gives you a natural place for these things to land. And by the way, household may not be the right theme. You get to decide that too. So there is freedom around that. My triage day, that's both personal and professional. That's the other thing, is your daily theme should be unilateral. They should work for both home and work. They should work. Like, I can watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine on Wednesday from the previous week because that's my looking day, and that might be when I want to do it. I don't have to. It just gives yourself or your brain a break. That's really what it does. Now, if you're not a calendar person and you're more of a to-do list person, and your calendar is basically barren except for appointments that you have with others, but your to-do list is overflowing, you're like, oh my God, then that's where I would start to use modes. So I would, instead of looking at the list in a dated order or by the actions, I would say, okay, well, pick a mode like time. Time is one of the easiest ones because you can quantify it. Okay, I have 30 minutes between meetings. I can do 6 5-minute tasks, or however increment of time you choose. Don't choose more than 3 different increments, though. You don't want to have like 12 different time increments that you could possibly choose from. I like 5 minutes, 15 minutes, and 30 minutes because I can say, okay, this will take me 5 minutes or less. This will take me 5 to 15 minutes, and this will take me 15 to 30. Anything above 30, I know I need to break down because I never get more than a half hour of focus time. So pick one of those categories of mode-based work, which you will get if you download the Daily Driver, which is at productivityist.com/get the Daily Driver. The PDF for mode-based work shows you get that. So that way you can see, oh, what are the modes? You might choose energy if you're more of an energy-based person, and maybe you are. Then, okay, categorize your tasks by low energy, high energy, shallow work, deep work, whatever. That would be another way to do it. That's where I would get started. And again, it depends on the type of person you are. If you're time oriented, like a calendar person, then I would look at theming as the option, and start small, one day, one block of time, what have you. If you're a to-do list person, I would start with modes, working by mode, and then pick one category of mode, like resource or time or energy, and start there, and then see how that works and build out from there. And the thing you can do in tandem with this, of course, is journal. Hey, you know what? This theme day is kind of working. Or, hey, you know what? I love working by energy level. And then that tells the story and builds it from there. Because you're right, Joe. I mean, this was 10 years in the making, more than 10 years in the making. And it's not like I don't evolve it and change it. And there are days where I fall down. There are days where you will fall. You have to have some empathy and grace for yourself during this process too. So don't get caught up in like, oh, I didn't do the theme day today. Oh, well, I guess it doesn't work. That's a terrible bias. Don't get bogged down by those biases. Um, this is a form of automation that can work. You just have to give it time to grow and give it a chance. And if you give it a chance and you do it bit by bit, you can make it work for you, and it'll make a difference. I've seen it work with hundreds upon hundreds of people, bordering on thousands now. And I know it can work for you if you give it a chance.
Awesome. So do you have time for one more question?
Absolutely.
All right. So tell us exactly what is in the TimeCrafting book that's coming out.
Okay. So I talk about the three primary components of time crafting, which are time theming, mode-based work, and then the review process, the reflection process. I talk about the three realms of productivity. So I talk about reckless productivity, ruthless productivity, and reasoned productivity, and how emotions and logic working in certain ways can lead us towards one of those three realms, depending on how we do it and how some of the elements of time crafting can help. Because it's divided, the book is really divided up into three pieces. And it's how I've taught this forever: mindset, method, mastery. So you have to have the right mindset going in. And then the method is actually, once you have the mindset, the method is, it almost flips a switch. Like I had a client that I worked with who did a group coaching. And he's like, I really didn't get it. And then I worked with him for 15 minutes one-on-one, and it just flipped. And all of a sudden the method was working for him. The mastery part is like about just fine tuning it and stuff like that. So things like what I call the productivity ROI, which is a scoring system that I use to kind of gamify the to-do list, which makes it's more of a self-reporting thing, which we're probably getting used to right now. A lot of self-reporting going on, but it's based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What do I need to do? What do I want to do? And I talk about like the different levels of theming, the different types of modes and when they can come in handy, and just the way that all of these things can come together in a way that works for you, so you can make it your own, kind of like that Bruce Lee adage of take what's useful, discard what isn't, and add your own. That's a lot of what this book is about. And it's the interesting thing about the book is that it's, even after I've submitted it, my biggest concern about submitting it, honestly, Michelle, is that I had to draw a line in the sand. I had to say, this is where it ends. This is the fundamental component. So there have probably been some other things that you'll see later, like, wait a minute, that wasn't in the book. Did he change his mind on this? And I didn't really, I mean, the fundamental elements are always going to be there, but there's always going to be some, again, it's a craft, so it'll evolve. But I talk about the mindset, the method, the mastery, and the biggest piece, if you can get that mindset piece, which we've touched on a lot today, and if you watch this again, you'll be like, oh, I think I can apply this way. Then the method becomes just something that is, it kind of becomes automated to a point. And then the mastery is just about like kind of sharpening the saw, if you will.
Awesome. That's amazing. So I want to tell people who are listening, by the time this podcast comes out, hopefully, fingers crossed, the book will be out.
Yep.
So you can snag the book at productivityist.com/book.
Yep, there'll be updates there, and then when the book comes out, you'll be able to order directly. It'll be available. At this point, I know it's Amazon has it. I know it'll be available in brick and mortar stores whenever we can go to them again. And I just yesterday got the notification through my Google alerts that Audible, the book is listed on Audible now already.
Oh, sweet.
So
cool.
I am not reading the book. It will not be me reading it, so you will not get to hear the dulcet tones of this Pacific Northwestern Canadian. And so if you order the book from Audible, my challenge is to see how many times they say productivityist incorrectly, the narrator. We'll see how that goes, but I'm excited. I've loved working with Mango Publishing, and this is the book that I've been wanting to write for a long time. And I have other books that I'm definitely going to be working on in the future, but this is the book that this is my kind of the compendium of the last decade of me in my productivity journey. And yeah, if you go to productivityist.com/book, you can learn more about get updates and pre-order the book right away.
Awesome. So you guys, the link will absolutely be in the show notes, so make sure you check that out. Mike, thank you so much for all the information that you gave us. This is mind-blowing for some of us. And for some of us, it's like, oh, okay, wow, I really need to start doing that. So I really, really, really appreciate the time.
Well, thanks so much, Michelle. I had a great time today, and stay safe, be well, and keep moving things forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, guys. We will see you on the next episode. Thank you for tuning in to the Automate to Dominate podcast at www.awesomeoutsourcing.com/podcast. My name is Michelle Thompson. Hey guys, if you absolutely love this show, I would greatly appreciate it if you would head on over to iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star written review. That would be amazing. And as always, if you guys know somebody who should be listening to this podcast, please don't keep it all to yourself. Share it with your friends.